Republicans dead.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
So, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
Hey, folks, and welcome back to the Enemies List podcast. I am your host, as always, Rick Wilson. I am joined today by the very smart Emily Amchick. She is the author of a book called Democracy in Retrograde. And I wanted to talk to her today because this is a book not just about the sort of broad concern and worry, legitimate in this country, that our democracy is in peril for a whole host of reasons, not just Donald Trump. There are broader reasons than that. But Emily and her co-author have written, I think, a very smart little book, not even a little book, a very smart book about how the fact that minority rule in this country in a lot of ways has become something that, while the Constitution was built to protect minority rights, it wasn't meant to impose minority rule. So I'm curious about, Emily, I'm going to always ask you the question I ask everybody: what led you to write this book right now?
So, hi everyone. I am an Instagram influencer. I'm at Emily in your phone. I Substack too.
See, look at that hustle right there.
Yeah, gotta start. People leave quick. And I used to be counsel to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. And what I kept hearing from my audience day in, day out was, I feel totally hopeless. It feels like nothing can change. And then, of course, what can I do? And so the thought behind the book was to explain to people why you feel so hopeless, why it feels like nothing can change. And it's
Right.
because of this entrenchment of minority rule. And the solution is, unfortunately, not a mere click, not a $5 donation. It is, in fact, all of us getting together and rising up as democracy is meant to do. And so the second half of the book is largely a way to help people figure out what is their place in making sure we have a strong democracy in this country.
So when you argue that democracy is in retrograde, I could give you 1,000 examples why I think that's the case, but this is your book. So tell me why you think democracy is in retreat and retrograde, and why it feels hopeless to most people.
So I think that the reason it feels hopeless is a couple different things. I think we can't discount social media. I am myself probably part of the problem, right? I think that
I'm the problem. It's me.
it's us. But I think that, in today's day and age, people are overloaded with a lot of outrage content, with a lot of content about how bad it is at an incredible speed, coming into our phones, into our bathroom with us, at all times. And when you get all of that information, you're told, oh, just click this, just sign this. We've been told that for 20 years, and you feel like nothing is changing. And one of the things I often tell my audience is, like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have seen massive shifts. Let me give, and I try to give examples of things that I have seen change over the years that are monumental. And I've been working inside Congress and seen members change their minds in front of my eyes. I've seen it happen. It certainly happens, but it's not instantaneous. And
so talk to us about things you're seeing now, or the things that you've seen about those changes in how people behave.
I think the best example I have that really clicks with people is our posture towards merit equality, right? And
Sure.
Most of us remember in the 90s, even the societal posture towards marriage equality was very, very different, even amongst Democratic leaders.
Barack Obama.
Right. And now, we have Donald Trump running with the narrative, of course, a false narrative, but nonetheless, the public narrative that he is pro-marriage equality.
Right.
And that is how pervasive it is. And we've seen Supreme Court precedents that enshrined it in law as it should be. Even smaller things, when you think about how the senators are approaching the internet and how they are approaching social media and all of that, it is changing. Not quick enough and not fast enough, lots of criticism, criticizing politicians is my day job. I have an infinite amount of it. But again, that's part of the problem, right? Which is all criticism, no hope. And so when we talk about why democracy is in retrograde, I think, one of the other components of the book is the decline of civic life in America. And so much of what makes democracy work is the public square and the social fabric and people coming together. And what we've seen over the last 30, 40 years, but I think really on warp speed in the last 20 years, is the complete and utter fraying of that. And the political extremism, the political polarization and tribalization and calcification, all of those things have really entrenched this country into two sides that they're never communicating. They're not going to school board meetings and having conversations with each other. They're not going to Lions clubs or churches or any of these things. They're not, we're not seeing each other outside on sidewalks, at playgrounds, any of that stuff, because we're in our homes. We're probably working 1 or 2 or 3 jobs, taking care of parents, taking care of kids, trying to get our kids to 7 different sports games, right? All of these things which have really frayed the fabric and made that really civic component of democracy incredibly tenuous.
It's that it's that Robert Putnam's book from the late 90s, I guess, Bowling Alone.
My favorite book.
It's tremendous. It's tremendous, and it was very prescient, and it was before the real rise of social media, obviously, but it did sort of illustrate this atomization we've had in our culture, our society, where nobody does the garden club anymore, or the book club anymore, or the book club maybe a little bit, or the bowling league, or the baseball league, or the softball team, whatever. Those things have sort of disappeared from our society, and now it's easier to rage farm people who are home on a Tuesday night being angry on the internet than it is to rage farm people who are out for beers with their friends, or play, or even just in like playing poker or bowling or whatever it is. Any other interaction with humans, has gotten more and more mediated by the phone, by
it's
socials.
Also a lot easier to hate people whom you never have to interact with.
Sure.
And there's a lot of social science about the psychological and the real physiological effects on the brain of people interacting and communicating with each other. And we are losing that. And I think, the siloed echo chambers that we exist in online, I'll sometimes, I'll go on TikTok for a couple hours and I'll feel
and
myself.
Then it's the next day.
And then it's 4 a.m. But I'll feel myself going down the rabbit hole. I'll see it happen. And luckily, I'm an adult, right, who has the ability to recognize it. But I mean, if I was 22, I would be cooked. I just feel it,
Yeah, look, I've said this to folks recently. They're like, how are you, staying sane after the election, blah, blah, blah. I told people, look, one of the things I've done, I've taken Twitter off my phone. I haven't left Twitter, but I've taken it off my phone because more and more it seems like an algorithm machine, just trying to break people. And the content on there is less and less relevant and less interesting because it's just become this alt-right machine for Elon. And I got 1.6 million followers on Twitter. It's a place I've spent a lot of time since 2009, all this stuff. But I took it off my phone because I recognized in myself, I was like hate scrolling. And at some point you just go, yeah, no, not for me. I'm done now. Today's the day I'm not going to play that game anymore. And I think it's important for people to think about that because if you can even just make yourself take an extra step, like, oh, I have to go get on my computer to do stuff on Twitter, it really does give you a sanity, like an air gap for a little bit of sanity in your life. But these things are designed to do this for people. They're designed to engage us. They're designed to hold us in that space and not let you sort of take a beat and take a breath. And is that part of it in your mind? Is that instead of a considered democracy, now we have this got to get clicks, got to get engagement attitude?
So, I mean, I think part of democracy going into retrograde and the entrenchment of minority rule is all of this. We've all become very, very busy, engaged in the outrage politics cycle, and we are
Mm-hmm.
not busy in the business of building the infrastructure to protect democracy, right? And what I hear from people all the time is I try to follow the news, I follow it closely for 6 weeks, I get so stressed out, I tap out, and then I come back in the next
Sure.
election. And what we can't have is people just tapping in once every 4 years, right? That's part of the
Right.
problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
the cornerstone of my book, Democracy in Retrograde, is that trying to figure out a way for everyone to figure out a way for them to have a sustainable and authentic civic engagement plan. Call it the civic action plan, because you got to figure out a way to consume political information so that you're informed, because being informed is a civic action, but informed in a way that's sustainable, that you can keep doing every day, that isn't just consuming outrage bait and getting you angry, but is actually informing you so you can move forward, so you can have conversations, so you can figure out that you need to go to your town meeting because they're not going to be putting the speed bumps on the road, that you need to get them there to protect some kids,
Right.
whatever it is that is in your town that's necessary, all of that stuff. But it's so I really worry. I consider I have like a great responsibility, I think, as a social media influencer that talks about politics a lot, to make sure I don't sort of rely on the crutch of just continually generating outrage, which is a very, very effective way to get clicks and views.
Oh yeah.
It works. I know why people do it. I'm on Instagram, a platform that doesn't monetize views, so it's different than other platforms that do. I'm not instantly rewarded with that. But so I think it's it's a little bit easier to be me,
Mm-hmm.
but it's
Mm-hmm.
hard because I'll see how effective it is. If I just posted about Marjorie Taylor Greene every single day, I would have 1 million followers.
Right. Right. No, that's true. So a lot of this book is about building community, and people, as I think we just talked about, are pretty desperate for community. They're pretty eager for community. They're
Yeah.
pretty they desire connection. That is a fundamental human behavioral trait. Talk to us about how you recommend people build community in the world where we have all these social media metrics and social media issues.
Yeah. Well, and the great irony of this book about getting out in real life is myself and my co-author, we met each other as social media influencers online, but we took that relationship offline. And my number one suggestion for everyone is always to start a book club. And we have a book club guide in the book,
Yes.
but and not in sort of the annoying way that sometimes people tell you to start a book club, but in a read the cheesiest books. My book club, our January selection is the Martha Stewart documentary. It's not really about the books. It's about gathering a group of people together, and there's a call to action. People are willing to show up every month if there's a book club, and you meet new people. I didn't know anyone in my book club. One person, we were really acquaintances. She invited me in. Now I've been in this book club, I think 5 or 6 years, and we meet every month, and it's really this cornerstone of my civic life. And now, of course, I've met these people, I've met their friends, we do things, it's like normal human behavior. But that's always my number one action. All you have to do is find a person, ask them a friend, you snowball to get a group of 5. That's your book club, you're set. The other thing, we really think that civic engagement is in and of itself a solution to the loneliness epidemic. So one of the really incredible things, I don't know, Rick, if you've found this in your life, but being involved in politics, I meet people who really share my values. They care about the same things as me. I'm able to make these really great friendships with people in a different way than just a random person I meet at the park, right? Like I've made some friends at the dog park, but it's a different type of relationship with these people who I really care about. And so we really think that getting more involved in whatever the civic thing is that brings you joy, there's a whole
Sure.
quiz and worksheet in here to help you figure it out. But whether that's volunteering or going to the school board every month, I mean, the best part of going to school board meetings is bringing your bestie and debriefing afterwards, right? Talking shit. And, you know, like that's the fun part.
The post operation shit talking.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you know, so, you know, showing up to school board meeting, not so fun. Going with a friend and making it a whole affair, fun. And you do it once. And, you know, I have a couple of profiles of people in the book and how they got civically engaged and sort of just different ideas. And one of the women was like, she started volunteering. She lives in Texas and she was helping with immigrant children. And she said, I planned to go for an hour. And then I started talking to people. And the first day I stayed for 3 hours. And now she just volunteers 6 days a week, right? Because she loves it. And she loves the people, right? She loves the people that she meets. And so I think it's a little bit of once you start, it really pulls you in. And that's how we find community. Community is, in fact, found by getting involved in your community.
Yeah, it's sort of recursive. It's you build a community by building a community. You don't inherit it necessarily. And I think again, going back to that prior generation, you did inherit those things. Oh, my dad was in the Rotary Club or you know, the whatever local civic organization that might have been in.
Right.
And there was a lot of sort of passing that along as a family thing. Oh, we're members of this, we do that. And I think it's different. I think it's different now, but building them in some ways, like there's less friction now to building a community because the upside of the online world is there's less friction to identify and organize those people that you find interesting and you have commonality with and you have similar motivations about things. So you talk a lot in the book, and I know we've sort of touched on this a little bit, about why Americans are polarized, calcified, and exhausted. And community building is the cure for a lot of that. But talk to us again, run through again some of the things that have caused people to reach the state that they're in now. I mean, beyond just the algorithmic drivers of it. Talk to me a little bit about why those people are, why people feel that way.
So, you know, I'm sure you've heard the term the exhausted majority. And this is something that really resonates with a lot of people I talk to. So there was an organization called More in Common that did a study to try to figure out what are the different buckets of people in America: progressives, liberals, conservatives. And they found 7 different groups. But their most salient finding was that 67% of America constitute the exhausted majority. These are people who are not on either of the wings. And the major difference between the exhausted majority and the people on the wings is that people on the wings view everything through a moral lens. They are on a crusade, a moral crusade. And everyone in the middle is, number one, living their lives. You know, busy doing their own shit, getting food on the table, having a little fun. But also they sort of view policy and politics as a series of issues that they have differing views about. Some things they care, whatever affects them. And it's very distinct. There's not a single bucket these people fit in. And the problem is the wings are very, very loud. And they take up a lot of space because they're very, very dedicated to being very loud. And that creates this cycle of disengagement. The exhausted majority says, I can't deal with that. It's too much. And we tap out. And then when we tap out, our silence is a civic action. Our silence is enriching and giving more power to the people who want us to be silent. We are actually helping them by tapping out of politics. And so, you know, extremism, I think, is a really serious problem in American politics today. It's gotten worse over my career. And the solution to extremism is lots of reasonable people being loud and getting involved and trying to start drowning out those voices. And there's certainly infrastructural things that need to be changed. And as minority groups who want to take power, these corporations that want to be able to control this country, they want to be able to pollute our rivers, they want to be able to employ children in their factories, right? All of these
the children cry out to work in the pit, in the mines.
Yeah. They're just giving the kids what they want. You know, they want to be able to control this country without having the exhausted majority in their way. And
Mhm.
we need to be able to figure out how to, you know, regain power, turn around gerrymandering. I'm a big fan of ranked choice voting, you know, a bunch of different things, institute fusion parties, all of these different infrastructural changes to be able to make democracy more robust and functioning. But none
Right.
of that's going to happen without a fundamental shift of exhaust a
Sure.
majority getting louder.
Well, I will say this: the someone asked me recently, a big donor asked me recently. It's like, if you could wave a magic wand, if you had $1 billion to spend, what would you do? I said I would go out into as many states as have ballot initiatives as I can, and I would do nonpartisan redistricting, and then I would dedicate another half of that to litigating partisan redistricting in states that don't have a ballot initiative and trying to lobby for it and make those changes. Because that is the fundamental killer app that has led to extremism in both parties. The fact that you have the Florida legislature, which is so wildly corrupt, pay for play, I am surprised the FBI isn't marching people out on the daily. It's so corrupt. And on the flip side of that, you have the New Jersey legislature in another political party's hands with a similar level of corruption. Why is that possible in both those states? Because the gerrymandering is extraordinary. It drives out the middle. It ensures you one-party control, essentially. And once you have one-party control, no matter what party it is, whether if you like them or not, it becomes corrupt and corrupting. And it reduces people's belief that they can make changes, small d, democratically.
Yeah. It's a recurring cycle, right? Like the worse it gets, the worse it feels, the less you want to be engaged. And power corrupts, man. You know, it really
it
does.
do. Oh, it do indeed. So you talk a lot about civics in this book, and about there's sort of a gap now about what civics means in America. What does civics mean to you in America these days?
This is a hard question. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of debate when we first started writing this book about using the word civics, because it's sort of cringe, you know. But it's the appropriate word, and I think that's American civic life. It's really another way to talk about our public life, right? And everything that entails. So the social fabric that keeps us together, and the politicians who are meant to reflect our views and our interests and us, right? They're supposed to represent us. And I think all of that is civic life. And a book club is civic life. A neighborhood potluck is civic life, as well as lobbying your state house. That's civic life. All of these different things. And I think that we've become a very atomized, individualistic culture. And it's really interesting when you think about, the history of America is so much about this idealized, bootstrapped individualist. But we, with technology, have really taken it to the extreme. And I hear from my audience all the time. I'll tell you, it's the holiday season. I personally feel it. We are all just talking about how we wish we had that village, right? Like we wish we were more connected to people. We're all me and my friends are all watching The Holiday, just like we wish.
As one does.
As one does in the holiday season. But I think it's really interesting that there's, amongst everyone that I know, a really unified desire for this. As you said, this desire for community is so deeply rooted in human nature, and technology has really taken that away. And I'll go online and I'm talking to my followers and I'm having these interactions, and it really does trick my brain into think I'm socializing, but it's not the same. And that's the hard thing. It's not. And it's really hard to, I have been really focused more on calling my friends, and just being like, not about anything specific. Hey, just calling to hear your voice and have a little bit of human interaction that's not work related.
It's funny because at the Lincoln Project, we have, there's a few guys like me and Stuart Stevens in our 60s, early 60s, blah, blah, blah. And we've got a bunch of younger operatives working for us who are in their 20s and 30s. And they often seem shocked when you call them on the phone.
Yeah.
And I know you get this. I mean, the younger kids would rather have you crawl through the window in the middle of the night and scream at them than actually pick up the telephone to talk.
Yeah.
It is interesting to me that seems to me to be a product in part of this isolating ability of social media and of technology to like let people hide away from their peers, their friends, their family, their coworkers. And I think that's regrettable. I think it's regrettable that we've entered into a phase where that sort of seems normal to people.
I mean, even in the workplace, I find it really concerning, right? I think you're much better able to have an effective conversation on the phone when you can hear people's tone. I was a litigator for a long time, and I would feel myself, I would get emails and I would read the tone as negatively as possible. And
Oh yeah.
I would think to myself, Emily, that's probably not the tone with which they wrote it, but you can't really tell with these text-based communications. And it is hard, and it doesn't allow you to start the conversation shooting the shit for 2 minutes, talking about, oh, how's your
Right.
kids' baseball?
How's your
career
weekend?
going?
Yeah.
This stuff that helps you build those relationships, and relationships are what helps you in your career. And and so it's really fascinating to me, especially when I'm talking to younger people in their 20s, trying to say like, well, it's going to benefit you. This isn't just about me being a boomer, which I'm not, I'm a millennial, but I have some boomer qualities because I worked with them for a long time. Not just me being a boomer insisting that you call me. It's really more about, I think it's beneficial and I think it's effective. And I do really worry. The texting, the group texts in particular, personally drive me very nuts. I can't do them.
I'm on so many hundreds of signal chats and group texts that my brain aches just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't keep up. If it's there was during the election, I would open Signal and it'd be like 300 missed messages, and I'd be like, impossible, impossible
Easy.
for me to read.
Easy, any day, any day. And part of that is humans also think that they're superpowered now and can divide their attention in ways they actually cannot really divide their attention. It's not as easy as people think cognitively to split up what you're doing. So as we wrap up the half hour here, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions really quickly. Tell us what the key takeaway folks should have when they read this book on the upside, because I think your book has an upside to it. Unlike, I mean, the title sounds grim, but there is a lot of solutions based stuff in this book. Talk to us about talk to us about why people should be optimistic about democracy as well as being cautious.
The title is a play on Mercury in retrograde.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a joke that we couldn't leave it on the table.
I know, but I get it.
By the time you finish this book, you will have a civic action plan. As you go through the book, there's worksheets, there's quizzes, there's lots of fun little activities, and you are encouraged to go write specific conclusions in the back. And so when you finish the book, you will have a civic action plan that is, your ideas, your authenticity and sustainable for you. And so we really want you to use this book to help, it's actually a self-help book. That's the category of type of book it is. It's not a political book. It's a way to figure out how to improve your life, improve your interaction with your community, and then also the happy side effect will be helping the health of democracy.
Right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, Emily. Folks, the book is Democracy in Retrograde. I think you will find it an empowering read, let's put it that way, by Emily Amczyk and Sammy Sage, How to Make Big Changes and Small in Our Country and in Our Lives. I think it's important because it is empowering to folks, and it's a quick read, it's a good read, and I recommend it. Get it wherever fine books are sold. Once again, Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, it's not often that we put a person from a faraway land on the enemies list other than Vladimir Putin, who is an all-time returning champion. But this week, we're going to go to South Korea We don't talk about South Korea a lot on the Enemies List podcast, but it's a country that I have some fascination with, some ties to, and some friends. And this week, South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol blew it. He decided to declare martial law Tuesday night of this week on the night of the 3rd. This lasted for about 6 hours, and he called out the military to try to declare martial law, to take over the parliament, and to hold on to power. And the South Korean people, both in the streets and in the halls of parliament, unanimously said no. They said, you're not going to use this tool that you think is going to be effective to preserve your power. You have to put this guy on the enemies list in part because in this era, people like that look at January 6th. People like that look at Vladimir Putin. People look at the authoritarian role model and they say, I can do that too. They say, I can pull this off. I can hold power. Well, he did not. The people took power back from him. They said no. The lawmakers, the South Korean lawmakers, and I want you to contrast this with January 6th. Soldiers had surrounded the assembly, the National Assembly building, to try to keep the lawmakers out. The crowd helped the lawmakers bum rush their own offices and jump over the fence and lifted them up over fences so they could go in and vote to end the martial law decree that Yoon had imposed. He is on the enemies list. They, my friends, are heroes of democracy. Talk to you next time.